Chapter 14. An Unexpected Escape. During the 2 years I had been in Brobdingnag, not a day went by without my hoping that I would escape and return home, even though I had no idea of how I would accomplish that. The ship in which I had arrived was the first ever seen in that land, and none had been sighted since. The king had given orders that if ever another one came close to their coast, it was to be brought ashore, and its crew and passengers carried to the palace. His idea was to find a wife for me, so I could raise a family and stay in his kingdom. But the thought of having children who would be kept in cages like tame birds was hateful to me. Besides, I could never forget my dear wife and children back in England. As my third year in Brobdingnag began, I was unexpectedly given the chance to escape. Glumdalclitch and I were invited to accompany the king and queen on a trip to their summer palace near the sea, in Flanflasnick, in the southern part of the kingdom. The trip was long and tiring, and I came down with a slight cold, but my dear little nurse became so ill she had to stay in bed. Being so close to the sea, I was filled with thoughts of escape every waking minute. Before I could make any plans, I had to see what the coastline looked like, so I pretended to feel sicker than I really was, and asked the Queen's permission to go to the shore, where I might breathe in the fresh sea air. I was given permission and put in charge of a trusted page who had cared for me in the past. Glumdalclitch, however, burst into tears at the thought of someone else caring for me, and she gave him strict orders as to what he was to do and not do. It almost seemed as if she had a premonition, a feeling that something would happen to me. The page carried me in my box to the rocks on the shore, where I ordered him to put me down. I raised one of my windows and looked sadly out to sea. Feeling a little sick, I told him that I was going to take a nap in my hammock. He closed my window to keep out the cold sea air and left me to my rest. From that point on, I can only guess that the boy may have gone off to look for shells or birds' eggs and left my box alone on the rocks, for the next thing I knew, I suddenly found myself awakened by a violent pull on the carrying ring at the top of my box. Then I felt the box raised very high in the air and carried forward at great speed. Clinging to my hammock, I called out at the top of my lungs, but there was no reply. I looked towards my windows, but saw only clouds and sky. Above me I heard a noise like the flapping of wings, and I suddenly realized what had happened. "Oh no!" I gasped. "Some eagle has the ring of my box in his beak, and he probably intends to drop it on a rock like eagles do with turtles to crack open their shells before eating them." Soon the noise and flutter of the eagle's wings increased, and my box was tossed up and down like a signpost on a windy day. Suddenly I heard several bangs against the eagle's body, then felt my box dropping. I was dropping with such incredible speed that I nearly lost my breath. My fall was stopped by a terrible splash, followed by total darkness. A minute later, my box began to rise until I was able to see light. I had fallen into the sea, and was alive, thanks to what I imagined was an attack on the eagle by several others who had chased him to steal his victim. Now that I was gently bobbing about on the top of the water, I slowly eased myself out of my hammock and used my sword to push open the small flap on the roof of the box to let in some air. Then my thoughts wandered to my little nurse. "Oh, my poor Glumdalclitch, how she'll grieve for me! And she'll probably be blamed for losing me when it wasn't even her fault. She'll surely be banished from court." But for the next several hours my concerns turned out to be for my own welfare. Any moment now I feared that my box would be smashed to pieces against some rocks or overturned by a violent wave. "And even if I escape these dangers for a day or two," I told myself, "I'll surely die from hunger, or from the cold, out here alone at sea."